Imagine a man who held the fate of the most influential person in human history in his hands. A man who had the power to say yes or no and change the course of civilization. He washed his hands. He said, "I am innocent of the blood of this righteous man." But did he truly escape responsibility? Did this symbolic act truly cleanse him of what he had done? Pontius Pilate, a name the entire world knows, a name inscribed in the creed, a prayer that billions of people have recited for 2,000 years in every corner of the earth, suffered under Pontius Pilate. He is the only ordinary mortal whose name has been preserved in this sacred formula. But what happened to this man after that most terrible day in history? What happened after he signed the death sentence? A sentence he himself acknowledged was unjust. Today we embark on a journey through time, through ancient manuscripts, through church traditions, and through the writings of historians to find the answer. And what we find will astonish you, because the fate of Pilate is not simply a historical mystery. It is a warning. It is a lesson. It is a mirror in which each of us can see ourselves. Stay until the end, because the most important revelation awaits you exactly where you least expect it. To understand what happened to Pilate after the crucifixion of Jesus, we first need to understand who he actually was, because the image we have in our minds, a weak, indecisive official washing his hands, is only one side of the coin. In reality, Pontius Pilate was a very different kind of man. He was born approximately between 10 and 15 BC. Exactly where is unknown. The name Pilate in Latin means armed with a spear. This may have been a cognomen, a nickname indicating the military achievements of his family. He followed the typical path of a Roman officer: military service, climbing the career ladder, participation in campaigns. Perhaps he fought in Germania or Gaul. The exact details are unknown, but the fact that he survived and reached the position of prefect of Judea tells us he was a tough, experienced man capable of acting under intense political pressure. In 26 AD, he received his appointment as prefect of Judea, one of the most difficult provinces in the entire Roman Empire. Judea was boiling over. The Jews refused to submit to Rome. Zealots were raising rebellions. The high priests were playing complex political games. Any provocation could ignite a bloody uprising. This place was a trap for any governor, but Pilate was not afraid, or at least he did not show fear. Josephus Flavius, the Jewish historian of the 1st century, left us vivid accounts of how Pilate conducted himself in this position. On one occasion, he ordered Roman standards bearing portraits of the emperor to be brought into Jerusalem, which was a terrible blasphemy for Jews who tolerated no images in their holy city. Thousands of Jews came to Caesarea, where Pilate resided, and for 5 days begged him to remove the standards. Pilate surrounded them with soldiers and demanded submission, but the crowd fell to the ground and bared their necks, saying they would rather die than permit such sacrilege. Pilate backed down. He ordered the standards removed. Why does this matter? Because it shows us Pilate knew how to read a situation. He could be cruel, but he was also pragmatic. He knew when to stop. On another occasion, he took money from the temple treasury, the so-called Corban, to build a new aqueduct for Jerusalem, a seemingly noble undertaking. But the crowd was outraged. Pilate dressed his soldiers in civilian clothes and ordered them to blend into the crowd of protesters. When the unrest began, the soldiers brutally suppressed it. Many people died. This is the real Pilate, not soft and indecisive, cold, calculating, capable of cruelty when he deemed it necessary. So why did he hesitate with Jesus? This question has haunted theologians and historians for 2,000 years, and the answer probably lies at the intersection of several factors. First, Pilate genuinely found no guilt in Jesus that was punishable under Roman law. Jesus did not call for armed rebellion. He was not gathering an army. He did not threaten the property or authority of Rome. The accusation that he calls himself the King of the Jews was contrived from the perspective of Roman law. Pilate understood this. Second, and this is very important, The Gospels tell us something astonishing. Pilate's wife, Claudia Procula, sent him a message right in the middle of the trial. "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much because of him today in a dream." This stopped Pilate. At least, it delayed him. And third, Pilate already had troubles with Rome. Someone among the Jewish elders had apparently already been informing on him. One more major uprising, and his career, and possibly his head, would be in danger, caught between two fires. On one side, conscience and law. On the other, the pressure of the mob and fear of losing everything. Pilate chose a third option. He washed his hands, literally and symbolically. But symbolic hand-washing does not wash away real responsibility. And the subsequent fate of Pilate, it seems, confirmed this. After the crucifixion of Jesus, which occurred around 30 to 33 AD, Pilate remained in his position for several more years. This is important to understand. He did not fall immediately. He was not punished instantly. He continued to govern Judea for at least 4 or 5 more years. During this time, several important events took place. He ordered the execution of several Galilean pilgrims, mixing their blood with sacrifices, which the Gospel of Luke mentions in its 13th chapter. Jesus himself commented on this event, saying that these Galileans were no more sinful than others, but it shows that Pilate's cruelty did not cease after the crucifixion. But the main blow came from where Pilate least expected it. In 36 or 37 AD, the exact date is debated, an event occurred that destroyed his career. A certain Samaritan prophet raised a crowd to Mount Gerizim, promising to find sacred vessels supposedly hidden there by Moses himself. The crowd was large and armed. Pilate sent cavalry and heavy infantry. The dispersal was bloody. Many were killed. Others were captured and executed, including local leaders and respected figures. The Samaritans complained to Vitellius, the governor of Syria and Pilate's direct superior, and Vitellius did not protect him. On the contrary, he removed Pilate from his position and ordered him to travel to Rome and answer before Emperor Tiberius himself. This is how Pilate's decade in Judea ended. Not in triumph, not with honors, but in disgrace, accusations, and a forced journey to the capital of the empire, where a trial awaited him. And here begins the most mysterious part of his story. What happened to Pilate in Rome, we do not know with certainty. And this in itself is strange, because about such a well-known figure, the sources suddenly go silent. Josephus is silent. Tacitus is silent. No official documents. There is only one brief reference. By the time Pilate reached Rome, Tiberius was already dead. This happened in 37 AD. The new emperor was Caligula, an unpredictable, cruel, and paranoid man. What he decided regarding Pilate is unknown. It is precisely this ancient silence that gave rise to numerous legends, traditions, and speculations. Let us examine them, from the most credible to the most fantastic. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, press the subscribe button and the bell right now. We regularly uncover such deep and captivating biblical mysteries, and you definitely won't want to miss the next video. Subscribe and be among those who seek true depth. The first version, condemnation and death in Rome. Eusebius of Caesarea, one of the most important church historians of the 4th century, wrote that Pilate, pursued by misfortunes, ultimately took his own life. This occurred, according to his account, during the reign of Caligula. Another early Christian writer, Tertullian, even claimed that Pilate had become a Christian at heart, and even reported to Tiberius about the resurrection of Jesus. But most scholars are skeptical of this claim. It looks like a later apologetic insertion. Why did Eusebius write about suicide? Perhaps because it fit the logic of events. Pilate had lost. His patron Sejanus, the influential favorite of Tiberius who had possibly helped Pilate obtain his position, had been executed back in 31 AD. There was no protection left. The Samaritan complaint was supported by the powerful Vitellius. The outlook appeared grim. But this is only one version. The second version is connected with a place called Wiedlingen or Wiedlingen, a small town in Switzerland, today known as Villingen. There is a tradition that Pilate was exiled precisely there, to a remote corner of the empire, and there, humiliated and forgotten, he ended his life. Near this place there is a mountain that locals have long called Pilate's Mountain, Pilatus, though linguists note that the name most likely derives from the Latin word pileatus, capped with clouds. But the legend lives on. The third version, and it is the most widespread in folk traditions, is connected with Lausanne and Lake Geneva. According to it, Pilate, after his condemnation in Rome, was executed or died in exile, and his body was thrown into the Tiber. But the body allegedly continued to disturb Rome. Strange things occurred around it. Then the body was moved to Lyon, then to Vienne, and there again, disturbances began. Finally, according to legend, the body was sunk in a lake near Lausanne, and again, unrest. The legend says that even after death, Pilate could find no peace. This legend is of course a folk tradition, not backed by documentation, but it is very eloquent. It speaks of how medieval Christians perceived Pilate, as a man pursued by guilt, as a man who could find no peace even after death. And there is yet a fourth, entirely unexpected tradition, the Ethiopian Church. Yes, you heard correctly. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church venerates Pontius Pilate as a saint. His feast day is June 25th. Together with him, his wife Claudia Procula is also venerated, to whom the Orthodox and Catholic traditions also attribute personal righteousness. How can this be? The logic of the Ethiopian tradition is this. Pilate tried to save Jesus. He declared him innocent. He washed his hands, distancing himself from the decision. And when Jesus rose, Pilate, according to some traditions, acknowledged him as Lord. In this context, he appears not as a criminal, but as a man who found himself at the crossroads of fate and did what he could under inhuman pressure. The Greek Orthodox Church venerates Pilate's wife, Saint Claudia. This too is telling. But let us return to the question that truly interests us. What do these different versions tell us about what happens to a person who knows the truth and does not act in accordance with it? Look at Pilate through the eyes of a psychologist. He had all the power. He had the information, a personal conversation with Jesus, his wife's warning, an inner conviction of innocence. He went out to the people 3 times and said, "I find no guilt in him whatsoever." 3 times. These are not the words of an indifferent person. These are the words of a man who knows the truth and is tormented by it. But then he made a choice. He chose peace, temporary, illusory peace. He decided that his career, his position, his comfort were more important than justice, and he washed his hands, but the hands remained dirty. This is a moment worth pausing to reflect upon, because how many times in our own lives do we wash our hands? How many times do we say, "This is not my business. I have nothing to do with it. Let others decide"? How many times do we know the truth and stay silent? Pilate is a mirror, and in this mirror, each of us can see ourselves. Now let us talk about what the Gospels tell us about Pilate's inner state during those events, because this is very important for understanding what happened afterward. The Gospel of John gives us the most detailed account of the trial. Pilate went out to the crowd and returned to Jesus several times. He asked, "What is truth?" This question is not rhetorical. It is the question of a man who is genuinely searching, a man who senses that before him stands something greater than just another prisoner. Jesus answered him, "You would have no power over me at all unless it were given to you from above." This answer is not an accusation. It is almost understanding. Jesus saw Pilate not as an enemy, but as a man caught in a trap of circumstances. But even this could not move Pilate from his dead point. Fear won. What did Pilate feel after Jesus was led out to be crucified? What did he feel when the sky darkened, when the earth shook, when the veil of the temple was torn in two? Because all this happened, and everyone saw it. The centurion who stood at the cross cried out, Truly, this was the Son of God. And Pilate, where was he at that moment? We do not know. But imagine this man, who had just signed the death sentence of a man he himself had declared innocent, who had heard his words, who had received a warning from his wife, and who now sees nature itself responding to this death. Such things are not forgotten. Such things haunt a person for the rest of their life. There is one more detail that few people notice. After the resurrection of Jesus, the chief priests and elders came to Pilate. They told him what had happened, that the guards he had posted at the tomb had fainted from fear, and the tomb was found empty. And they asked Pilate to help conceal this fact, to give them money to bribe the soldiers and spread the rumor that the disciples had stolen the body at night. Pilate agreed, or at least did not prevent it. But think, he knew. He received a report from his own soldiers. He heard what had happened, and he chose silence. Again, washed his hands. Again, chose convenience over truth. And it was precisely after this, several years later, that his career collapsed. Is there a connection here? From a purely human logical standpoint? Probably not. Pilate's downfall came through the Samaritan incident, a quite concrete political mistake. But from a spiritual standpoint, there is a sense that it is all connected. That a person who time and again chooses falsehood sooner or later finds themselves in a situation with no way out. The return journey to Rome. A long, comfortless journey of a man who knew and did not act, who had power and lost it, who washed his hands and could not wash them clean. What happened next, we have already discussed. Several versions, none definitive, the silence of the sources. But there is one more testimony worth mentioning. This is the apocryphal Letter of Pilate to Tiberius, a document whose historical authenticity is very doubtful, but which is interesting as a reflection of how the early church imagined Pilate's inner state. In this letter, Pilate allegedly writes to Tiberius and tells him about Jesus, acknowledging his miracles and his own guilt. He describes the resurrection. He tries to explain why he acted as he did. This is, of course, a later fabrication, but it speaks of something important. Early Christians did not perceive Pilate as an unambiguous criminal. They saw in him a tragic figure, a weak man, but not an indifferent one, a man who knew and could not bring himself to act. There is a difference between evil and weakness. Judas betrayed deliberately for money. Pilate was afraid. These are different dimensions of guilt, and the church tradition, it seems, sensed this difference. That is why some traditions preserved his memory, not as a saint in the full sense, but as a man who found himself at the edge and failed to meet this test. Now let us approach the deepest layer of this story. What does the fate of Pilate mean for us today? First, power does not protect from responsibility. Pilate had legions. He had the right of pardon. He could at any moment have said no, and it would all have ended. But he did not, and none of his power saved him from the consequences. His career ended. His name survived, but in what context? Every time a believer recites the creed, they pronounce Pilate's name, as a reminder that power and weakness can live side by side. Second, compromise with conscience is costly. Pilate was not a monster. He was a man who made a compromise, just once. But that one compromise has haunted him and haunts his memory for 2,000 years. Third, the question, what is truth, is the most important question a person can ask. Pilate asked it, but he did not wait for the answer, or did not want to hear it, because the answer would have required action from him, and action would have required sacrifice. Fourth, symbolic hand-washing does not cleanse. How many times do we tell ourselves, I have nothing to do with this? But conscience is not a human court. Conscience knows the truth, and silence in the face of injustice is also a choice. Fifth, the fate of Pilate teaches us that there is no neutral position before the face of Jesus Christ. Pilate tried to take a neutral position and could not. because no such position exists. Either you are with him or you are against him. Washing hands is also a choice, simply a choice of no. And finally, sixth, grace is open to all, even to Pilate, even to those who have made irreparable mistakes. The Ethiopian tradition that venerates him reminds us, we do not know what happened in the heart of this man in the final hours of his life. We do not know whether he turned to God in the moment of death. We do not know, and therefore have no right to pronounce a final verdict. God is the judge, not us. There is one moment in the gospel text that I want to dwell on separately, when Pilate asked, "What then shall I do with Jesus who is called Christ?" This question is addressed not only to the crowd, it is addressed to each one of us. What do you do with Jesus? You can wash your hands. You can say, "This is not my business. This is ancient history. This is someone else's tradition." But the question never goes away. It returns at night, in moments of silence, in moments when everything external grows quiet and only conscience remains. Pilate could have entered history as the man who saved an innocent person, as the man who stood firm against the pressure of the mob, as a man whose name is spoken with respect. Instead, his name is spoken daily, but as a reminder of the betrayal of conscience. And now, about hope. Because this story should not end only as a warning. If Pilate is a mirror of our weaknesses, then Jesus is a mirror of God's power. The one whom Pilate condemned rose again. The one who was rejected became the cornerstone. That same blood that Pilate wanted to avoid became the blood of salvation for billions. And here is what is astonishing. God did not need Pilate to accomplish his plan. God used even the betrayal and weakness of man for his glory. Not because betrayal is good, but because God is greater than any human weakness. This is the gospel, the good news. News that even where man fails, God triumphs. Pontius Pilate washed his hands and thought that was the end. But that was only the beginning of the greatest victory in the history of the universe. The tomb was found empty, and no washed hands, no bribed soldiers, no official versions could hide this. Because truth needs no defense, it defends itself. Pilate asked, "What is truth?" and did not wait for the answer. But truth continued to speak. Through the empty tomb, through the testimony of the disciples, through 2 millennia of church history, through this channel, through your hearts that are hearing these words right now. What is truth? Jesus answered this earlier. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Pilate did not hear, but you are hearing, and that changes everything. If this story touched your heart, please press the like button right now. It takes just 1 second, but for our channel, it means a great deal. Every like helps YouTube show these videos to more people, those for whom this information can change their view of the world and of their own heart. Subscribe to the Holos Viri channel if you haven't done so already. Press the bell so you don't miss a single new video. We continue to reveal the depth of God's Word through real historical facts, through living human stories, through questions that give no rest. Write in the comments, what struck you most in this story? What do you think about the fate of Pilate? Do you have your own answer to the question, what do you do with Jesus? We read every comment. Your thoughts inspire us and help us create the next videos. And if you want to support the channel, share this video with those for whom it might be important. Send it to a friend, to family, to acquaintances. May these questions touch as many hearts as possible. Thank you for being with us today. God bless you. Until the next video on the Holos Viri channel.